You have felt it, haven't you? That heavy shadow hanging over your shoulder. That quiet, nagging voice whispering that you are somehow flawed, that you were born broken, that you are guilty before you even take your first breath. We have all carried that weight. But what if I told you that the weight you are carrying is based on a lie so carefully constructed, so ruthlessly protected, that it took 2,000 years to crack the foundation? I am not talking about conspiracy theories. I am talking about history that was buried in the sand. I am talking about 7 specific words written on a fragile sheet of papyrus that terrified the most powerful institution on earth. Welcome. Today, we are not just looking at old papers. We are looking into a mirror. We are going to uncover the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and in doing so, we are going to uncover the truth about you. Let's go back to 1896, Cairo. The air is thick with dust and the noise of the market. A German scholar named Karl Reinhardt buys a stack of old torn papyrus from a street vendor. He thinks he is buying an antique. He doesn't know it yet, but he is holding a time bomb. He is holding the voice of the woman who was silenced so that an empire could be built. For centuries, you were told Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. You were told she was a sinner who needed saving. Why? Why destroy the reputation of the one person who stood closest to the teacher? Because she held a secret that threatened the hierarchy. If you know the secret she knew, you don't need the structure. You don't need the middleman. The Vatican kept this text in the dark. It faced floods, wars, and bureaucratic nightmares. It is almost as if the universe itself was waiting for the exact right moment for this to resurface. And I believe that moment is now. I believe you are hearing this right now for a reason. So, what was the secret? What are the words that change everything? In the text, hidden on page 8, Jesus is speaking to his disciples. But he isn't giving them rules. He isn't telling them who to pay or where to pray. He looks at them and says, "Sin does not exist. Let that land for a moment. Sin does not exist." He explains that what we call sin is just us acting against our own nature. It is not a stain on your soul. It is a forgetting of who you are. The church told you that you were born guilty to keep you dependent. Mary's gospel tells you that you were born divine, but you have fallen asleep. This is the shift. This is why they erased her. Because if you know you aren't broken, you cannot be controlled. But the story gets darker. The text reveals a brutal confrontation, a moment that explains 2,000 years of history. Peter, the rock, the founder of the church, turns on Mary. He is furious. He asks, "Did he really speak privately with a woman and not openly to us? Are we to turn around and all listen to her?" Can you hear the jealousy? Can you hear the bruised ego? It wasn't about truth. It was about power. It was about gender. Levi steps in and tells Peter the truth, saying, "If the Savior made her worthy, who are you to reject her?" But Peter won the history books. Mary was labeled a whore, and her teachings, the roadmap of the human soul, were buried. Until now. Mary laid out a map. She spoke of the 7 powers of wrath. These aren't demons with pitchforks. They are psychological states: darkness, desire, ignorance, jealousy, flesh, intoxicated wisdom, and deceptive cunning. She taught that the soul has to face these guardians to be free. She gave us the passwords. She gave us the keys to unlock our own cages. When the soul faces these powers, it doesn't beg for mercy. It declares its power. It says, "I was dominated, but I did not dominate. I recognize that everything is being dissolved." It is a declaration of absolute freedom. This is what was stolen from you: the knowledge that you have the power to liberate yourself. You don't need to look up at a pulpit. You need to look inward to the nous. the divine mind that sits between your soul and your spirit. I have spent years digging through these forbidden archives, piecing together the fragments that survived the fires. And I have compiled everything, the full translation, the missing context, the dangerous truths, into a guide called Why the Apostles Hid Jesus' Most Dangerous Words. It is waiting for you in the pinned comment. Listen to me closely. The world feels chaotic right now because the old lies are crumbling. The truth is rising from the desert sands. You are not a sinner. You are a spark of the divine trying to remember its source. Don't let this just be another video you watch and forget. Let this be the moment you decide to stop carrying the weight of a 2,000-year-old lie. If you are ready to reclaim your own history, if you are ready to hear the voice they tried to silence, check the link. Join us. We are a community of seekers who are done with the edited version. My name is the Wise Investigator. And remember, the truth was never lost. It was just waiting for you to be ready to hear it. Now that the dust has settled on the history, we need to look at the words themselves, because knowing the book exists is one thing. Understanding what it actually says? That is where the transformation happens. That is where the danger lies for the institutions that tried to keep you asleep. We are going to open page 8 of the manuscript. This is the heartbeat of the forbidden text. The scene is intimate. Jesus is preparing to leave, and the disciples are waiting for a command. They are waiting for rules. They are waiting for a new law to follow. But he doesn't give them a law. He gives them a key. According to the translation by Dr. Karen King at Harvard, Jesus looks at them and says 3 words that dissolve 2,000 years of religious guilt. He says, "Sin does not exist." I know. I can feel your mind resisting that. We have been programmed for centuries to believe we are born stained, that we are fundamentally wrong. But listen to the rest of the sentence. He explains that sin is not a cosmic crime. It is simply what happens when you act against your own nature. It is an illusion you create when you forget who you are. Do you understand the magnitude of this? If there is no original sin, there is no need for a middleman to wash it away. If you aren't broken, the church cannot sell you the cure. This one sentence cuts the strings of control. But this freedom terrified the men in the room. And this is where the story gets human. It gets raw. The text describes a brutal showdown. Mary shares these high teachings, the secrets of the soul, and Peter, the rock, the man who would become the first pope, snaps. He doesn't attack the message, he attacks the messenger. He asks, "Did he really speak privately with a woman and not openly to us? Are we to turn around and all listen to her?" Hear the insecurity in his voice. This wasn't about theology. This was about a man terrified that a woman held a connection to the divine that he didn't understand. It was the ego fighting the spirit. And for the last 1,600 years, the ego won. They silenced Mary to save the hierarchy. But they couldn't burn the roadmap she gave us. Mary describes the journey of the soul. She talks about the 7 powers of wrath. Now, don't think of these as demons with horns. Think of them as psychological states that trap you right now. Darkness, desire, ignorance, deadly jealousy, the slavery of the flesh. She explains that these are the layers you have to peel back, and she gives us the password to get past them. When the soul confronts these powers, it doesn't beg. It speaks with authority. It says, "I was not recognized by the world, but I recognize that everything is being dissolved." It is a declaration of sovereignty. It is you, standing in your power, telling the darkness that it has no hold on you because you know where you come from. This is the nous, the Greek word for the higher mind. Jesus explains to Mary that we don't see the divine through the soul or the spirit, but through the mind that sits between the two. It is a bridge you already have inside you. You don't need to build it, you just need to cross it. We are living in a time where the old structures are failing. You feel it every day. The reason you are watching this, the reason you are still here listening to my voice, is because you are looking for that bridge. You are tired of the incomplete version. You now possess the context. You know the history. You know the conflict. But knowing is only the first step. The real work is applying this ancient roadmap to your modern life. I have put the complete breakdown of these 7 powers and the exact words of liberation in that guide I mentioned, Why the Apostles Hid Jesus' Most Dangerous Words. It is in the pinned comment. It is there for the ones who are ready to walk through the door Peter tried to close. My name is the Wise Investigator. The text was buried, but the truth in your blood never forgot. Let's keep digging. We are back in that room. Can you feel the tension? Mary has just finished speaking. She has just laid out the roadmap of the soul, a path to immortality that Jesus shared only with her. You would expect the disciples to be grateful. You would expect awe. But that is not what happens. Instead, we see the very first cracks that would eventually break Christianity apart. Andrew speaks first. He shakes his head and says, "Say what you will, but I do not believe the Savior said these things. These teachings are strange ideas." It's the classic dismissal. It's too weird. It's too different. But Peter doesn't just doubt the words. He attacks the source. And this is the moment the patriarchy dug its heels in. Peter explodes. He asks, "Did he really speak privately with a woman without us knowing? Did he prefer her over us?" Listen to the rage in that question. It isn't about truth. It's about rank. It's about the wounded ego of a man who thought he was the favorite, realizing the teacher had a deeper connection with someone else, someone he considered inferior simply because she was a woman. This is the root of the silence. This is why, for 2,000 years, you heard about Mary the prostitute, not Mary the master. They couldn't erase her presence, so they assassinated her character. In the year 591 AD, Pope Gregory the Great stood in a pulpit in Rome and delivered a sermon that sealed this lie. He took 3 different women from the Bible and merged them into one repentant sinner. Why? Because a sinner needs a priest to save her. A teacher doesn't need anyone. By making her a whore, they stripped her of her authority. And in doing so, they stripped you of the knowledge she held. And what was that knowledge? What was the specific mechanic of the spiritual vision she described? In the text, Mary asks Jesus a question that none of the men were smart enough to ask. She asks, "Lord, when one sees a vision, does one see it through the soul or through the spirit?" It is a technical question. It is brilliant. And Jesus gives an answer that the church completely forgot. He says, one sees neither through the soul nor through the spirit, but through the mind that is between the two. The Greeks called it the nous. It isn't your brain. It isn't the voice in your head worrying about bills. It is a specific faculty of consciousness, a bridge between your biological self and your eternal spark. Jesus was teaching her how to activate this bridge. He was teaching her that you don't need a temple. You are the temple. The nous is the altar. This is the secret that makes institutions nervous. If you can access the divine directly through the mind that sits between, what do you need them for? You don't. And that is why Levi had to step in. In the text, Levi stands up to Peter. He looks him in the eye and says, "Peter, you have always been hot-tempered. Now I see you contending against this woman like an adversary. But if the Savior made her worthy, who are you to reject her?" Levi understood. He saw that the message mattered more than the gender of the messenger. But history was written by the victors, and the Peters of the world won the political battle. They burned the books, they buried the jars, but they couldn't stop the signal. We are recovering this signal now. We are remembering that the mind between is still there, waiting to be used. In the next part, we are going to look at the final, most terrifying part of Mary's teaching, the specific words you must say to the final guardian at the moment of death. The password to eternity. If you are ready to stop being a follower and start being a knower, keep listening. The path is just opening up. We need to zoom out, because this story is bigger than just one gospel found in Egypt. If you want to understand the full scope of what Mary Magdalene knew, you have to look at the threads that connect her to the rest of the ancient world. There is another text, one that survived in the shadows. It is called the Pistis Sophia. In this manuscript, the resurrected Jesus is speaking with his disciples, but it's not Peter who dominates the conversation. It's Mary. She asks the most questions. She receives the most praise. She is the star pupil. And in this text, she reveals a teaching about death that will make the hair on your arms stand up. She explains that when the soul leaves the body, there is a fleeting moment, a tiny window of absolute clarity, a flash where you remember exactly who you are and where you come from. If you can hold on to that awareness in that split second, you are free. You exit the loop. But if you get distracted, if you get confused by the lights or the fear, you're dragged back. You are recycled into another life of forgetting. Now, here is where the investigator in me gets chills. Jean-Yves Leloup, a brilliant researcher, pointed out that this exact same teaching exists in a completely different culture thousands of miles away. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo Thodol. Think about that. You have Gnostics in Egypt and Buddhists in the Himalayas describing the exact same post-death experience. The blinding light, the entities trying to distract you, the need for a password or a mantra to maintain your focus. This isn't a coincidence. This is evidence. It means the Gospel of Mary wasn't just a religious tract. It was a technical manual. It was a survival guide for the soul, preserving a universal truth that the West tried to burn and the East managed to keep. And Mary was the guardian of this manual. But she was even more than that. In the Gnostic tradition, there is a concept called Sophia. In Greek, it means wisdom. But it's not just an idea. It's an entity. Sophia is the feminine aspect of God, the cosmic mother, the breath that connects the void to the matter. Western theology deleted her. They wanted a bachelor God, a father with no mother. But the Gnostics knew you can't have creation without the feminine. And they believed that Mary Magdalene was the earthly anchor for this energy. She was the incarnation of Sophia. Do you see why Peter was so jealous now? It wasn't just sexism. It was an ontological threat. When the male disciples spoke, they were relying on memory. I remember he said this last week. I remember he did that. Memory fades. Memory distorts. But Mary? Mary wasn't relying on memory. She was channeling. She was a living bridge, accessing the na in real time. She was plugged into the source. Peter saw a woman. Jesus saw the divine wisdom standing right in front of him. They tried to sever this connection. They tried to turn the cosmic mother into a streetwalker. But the truth is, like water, it always finds a crack to flow through. And right now, it is flowing to you. We are approaching the final secret, the actual words, the declaration of independence that the soul must speak to the fourth power to break the chains of gravity and time. My name is the Wise Investigator, and we are about to hand you the key they tried to throw away. We have arrived at the core, the absolute heartbeat of the forbidden gospel. We are on page 9 of the manuscript. This is the secret Rome wanted to bury forever. This is the reason the fires were lit. Mary recounts the final test. The soul is standing before the fourth power, wrath. This guardian tries to crush you with your own rage, your own jealousy, your own darkness. It expects you to cower. It expects you to beg. But Mary teaches us to do the exact opposite. She gives us the words of power. The soul looks the guardian in the eye and says, "Why do you judge me when I have not judged you? I was dominated, but I did not dominate. I was not recognized by the world, but I recognize that everything is being dissolved, both the earthly and the heavenly." Do you feel the weight of those words? You aren't confessing sins. You aren't asking for permission. You are declaring your freedom. You are rejecting the judgment of the system. You are stepping out of the game of duality. And the text says that when the soul speaks this truth, it is freed. It ascends toward the repose of time in the silence. Now, what is that? It's not a heaven with fluffy clouds and harps. It is a state of consciousness. It is a place beyond the ticking clock, beyond the noise of the monkey mind, beyond birth and death. Immortality, according to Mary Magdalene, isn't about living forever in this heavy physical body. That would be a prison. Immortality is waking up to the part of you that was never born, the spark that cannot die because it is not made of matter. This teaching was dangerous. It liberated people from fear. And an empire cannot rule people who aren't afraid. So in 325 AD, Emperor Constantine called the Council of Nicaea. He didn't care about truth. He cared about politics. He needed a unified religion to glue a crumbling empire together. Then in 367 AD, Bishop Athanasius issued the order: burn the books, destroy the heresy. They tried to wipe the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Thomas, and the Gospel of Philip off the face of the earth. But here is the beautiful twist. Some monks refused to obey. Instead of burning the wisdom, they protected it. They sealed these scrolls in clay jars and buried them deep in the Egyptian desert, praying that one day the world would be ready to read them again. 1,600 years of silence passed. And then, the earth gave them back. In 1896, Cairo. In 1945, Nag Hammadi. In 1947, the Dead Sea Caves. One by one, the jars broke open. The truth clawed its way back into the light. It is as if the universe itself refused to let the lie win. And now, here we are, you and I. We are the end of that chain. You are now a custodian of this knowledge. You know the secret history. You know the roadmap. You know that sin does not exist. Only forgetting exists. The question is, what are you going to do with it? You can close this video and go back to the comfortable narrative. You can pretend you never heard this. Most people will. Or you can start the journey inward. You can stop looking for salvation in a building and start finding it in the silence. You can awaken the nous. We have prepared the full guide, Why the Apostles Hid Jesus' Most Dangerous Words, linked in the pinned comment. It goes deeper than we ever can here. Thank you for having the courage to walk into the desert with me. Thank you for being a seeker. My name is the Wise Investigator. Remember, the first step to immortality is simply remembering who you really are. I'll see you in the silence.